Everybody.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
Welcome to Sound Shop Vlogs Live. This is the Friday group show. With me today, Greg St. Germain and Arno Miller. And today we are going to talk about RF. So, for those of you guys who are new and tuning in, this is the Howard Stern of production vlogs. A lot of companies like to be serious and show how they're improving themselves, and we don't. So, that being said, why don't we just go around and introduce ourselves real quick? Greg, we'll start with you because you're on the left.
Yeah, hi guys. Greg, my company's RDX Productions. We specialize in mostly competition, acapella, and choir concerts. RF specific things that we do. We run up to 28, 32 channels of wireless in some of the most dense places. We do Broadway twice a year and Carnegie Hall. And it's a lot of fun. Yeah, good times.
Yeah. All right. You guys already know me. I'm Greeny and Arno. Why don't you say a quick bit about yourself as well?
So my name's Arno Miller. I am a front of house engineer and monitor engineer based outside New York City and New Jersey. Work with K-Sound. As well, had the opportunity to work at Mask Sound in East Rutherford, who owns a company called Professional
Bliss.
System.
I think Arno's having a bit of a couple of internet gremlins today.
Wireless down in
he-
Florida, James Staffo. And oh, you guys still got me?
Yeah, I finished your word.
Ah.
So anyway, so let's get right into it.
Right into it. We're in it.
Yeah, so talking about RF today, and kind of the big discussion is, why do we have to deal with this stuff? And why is it important to us? So really, RF came about because people didn't want cables on stage anymore, and they wanted a way to run around the stage, as some of those crazy rock stars do, without being tied down by a cable. So they formulated ways to be able to transmit data, in our case audio, over radio frequency. So as it grew, as the technology grew and the need grew, we've now seen pretty big leaps
Forward.
Give him a second.
forward in the case.
Yeah, I can see his internet's dropping in and out there. Well, anyways,
thing I want to touch on.
Yeah, Arno, you're dropping in and out there, but why don't
All right, let me exit out. I'm gonna jump back in a second, guys.
The things that Arno wants to
keep
touch
going.
on are the ABCs of setting up your wireless system. So A stands for antenna placement, B stand for batteries, and C is your coordination. These are really important principles to follow. If your antennas are in the wrong spot, obviously, you're going to deal with dropouts. You're going to deal with poor coverage. The batteries that you use, unreliable battery brands and all that, can die in the middle of a show, or they could affect the power of your microphone. There's the whole, do I use rechargeable or do I just use disposable debate? And then obviously coordination, when you should use coordination software, always, and how to properly use it and go about coordinating your microphones. I think that's what you're going to say, Arno.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just making sure you have the right antenna placement, making sure you have batteries that are fresh, and making sure that you've done your coordination. That's the big thing that I will touch on there. So I know you want to touch on antenna placement, Greg. So why don't you take that?
Yeah. So if anyone hasn't been following it, RFNU is actually doing some really cool seminars right now, and all of the photos that I will be showing are completely ripped from their video from this week, actually, or last week. So obviously placement is key. You don't want to be next to metal cages. You don't want to be 300 feet away from your source. The axis and polarity of your antennas to your microphones are really key. So
It's interesting real quick. I'll butt in real quick. If you guys aren't too familiar with RF concepts, you can almost think as your antennas almost like microphones. A lot of them exhibit the same polar patterns as microphones do. So the same kind of principles in capturing signal would apply to capturing RF.
Right. So there's like two common setups that you're going to see in like your touring / concert kind of setups. I'm gonna do hopefully the share screen thing works. So you have the antennas are at front of house, and hopefully the screen share works. Again, this
Green,
is
you can
from
hide me if you need.
Yeah, I'm gonna just solo this, and then we'll just be able to hear Greg and us.
these images are from RFNU. I did not make these, giving them all of the credit. So this is where your antennas are at front of house and your talents on stage. This is a paddle antenna coverage. And you can see, you're getting a wide range. You have some dead spots that are kind of in your 180 degrees of your paddle, which could be wanted or not wanted depending on what else is going on in these wings. Sometimes you have broadcast people, sometimes you have news, whatever. So that's like your standard antennas are at front of house. I have paddle antennas pointing at the stage kind of setup. Another setup would be,
Oops, we lost the screen there, but
yeah, I'm going to pull it. I can't just
good.
tap over the.
I gotcha.
So another setup you have is your antennas in the wing. So this guy is also going to be on paddle antennas. And Arnold will go into the different antenna types. So you have my antennas are on the wing, talents on
I'm
stage,
gonna
and
pull this up.
blasting stage. So you can see all of the zone out here is not getting picked up. That could be what you want. That could be not what you want. You're getting full stage coverage and you're close to the talent. We'll get into placement a little bit more on mic proximity to receivers because that's also something you need to consider. You don't want to overload the receiver with your microphone. If you're too close, I think it's like for a paddle antenna, you need to be 10 feet away. For the quarter wave whips, you need to be at least 3 feet away, and then helical 20 feet. I'm pretty sure that those are the numbers. So these are if you're just picking up microphones. If you're in a scenario where you're kind of using in-ears and you're using microphones, something you might want to consider is, you don't want your in-ears broadcasting into your mic feed. So what you can do is you can leave your in-ears on the wing, and this is with a helical antenna, so that's why the pattern's a little bit funky. And
Let me
you know
pull
that
this image up for everybody.
yeah, so you're broadcasting on stage to your IEMs, and you're not going to be broadcasting into your microphone receivers at all. So that's kind of a funky pattern you can do to just ensure that I'm broadcasting IEMs on stage. Front of house has clean signal, and we're not going to overlap anything in terms of our IEM like mic transmitters. And we have full coverage of the room for all of the tools that we need to use. Now, obviously, with a setup like this, if you have a talent or some kind of show where they go into the house or they go like somewhere beyond these limits of the venue, you'll need to plan for those solutions. But those are like your three basic setup. You have
It's interesting that they, sorry, real quick. It's interesting that they suggested that one because that would really only be useful if monitors was coming from front of house. If you had a monitor guy or something going on stage, that would not be a good.
I
By
think
the way, real quick, guys, when I solo the screen, are you guys all able to still hear whoever's talking? We were trying this out for the first time. We're not. We hope that you're still able to hear us all. But sorry. So let us know in the comments if you can't hear us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
So I would say that's a scenario where, like, in my situation where I don't have a monitor engineer doing my shows, and it's definitely a one-man team for everything. I also don't use in-ears, so I don't have to deal with that. But my personal preference is mics in the wing because I am just of the mentality of keep the receivers close to the source. There's ways to monitor your mics during the show. There's always someone backstage. You can have someone monitor them that you trust and that is up to speed on wireless. So I'm a fan of putting them in the wing, but I can see benefits to both. I think it's just a different older school mentality for the non-digital stuff. So yeah, those are my few ripped from RFNU suggestions because they're really useful and I use them all the time. And it's just cool to have graphics to kind of connect the dots to like techniques that you've been using yourself without having the time to make them.
For sure. So I think Arno's going to show us the different kinds of antennas you can use.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull up a
Oh boy.
little slide to get it going.
I'm going to just hide ourselves.
And what I'm going to do is pull this up. So let's start actually with that, not that, but this one. So this one here, this is a quarter wave. You guys can still hear me. You guys can chime in, Grooney and Greg. So this quarter wave antenna, what it means is it's a quarter of the wavelength. So this is what you'll see commonly packaged with some RF if you purchase some of the lower and mid-level stuff. Works well. I know he had mentioned, if you're in sight, obviously that's a big thing with antennas. If you're in sight of what it is, should do the trick for most of what you do. However, as you get into bigger stages and whatnot, um, you're gonna find the need for other antennas. This one right here is a half wave, exactly what it says. It's half of the wave. Um, you'll get these also packaged with some of the other Shure stuff that you'll buy. Also good. Both of those are omnidirectional microphones, so they're going to pick up equally in all directions. Now we're going to go into the directional ones. So this is an LPDA, so it's a logarithmic periodic dipole array. And what this means, it's commonly known as a shark fin or a paddle. This is kind of a directional antenna that's going to pick up. It's essentially a cardioid pattern, if you want to think of it in that sense, to relate to like a microphone. It's going to pick up directionally. So this is good to point at your stage when you're looking to pick up RF from that area. That kind of what Greg was saying. Furthermore, you have what they call a helical antenna. Now, the benefit of something like this is it actually works in a slightly different way than an LPDA. So, whereas the LPDA actually fires in one plane, you guys can't see me right now, but I'm making hand signals. The benefit of a helical, it actually fires in a corkscrew. So that picks up on 360-degree plane. So no matter how your talent is holding their microphone, it's actually going to pick that up. And commonly, you'll see these on the
I
sides of
think real
stage.
quick too, it would
Yeah.
be important to talk about polarization
Yes.
with respect to antenna pickup.
So I wasn't going to dive that deep necessarily, but in terms of this, you'll see these commonly for IEMs just because they are a little more directional. And lastly, you'll see the domed helical, which is popping up more, a little bit easier to carry around than the big boy like this one. So those are your main antenna types. There's a few more that we can touch on maybe if we go a little deeper, but those are I think the main ones that we'll be talking about. I think mostly we'll be discussing these guys though, and possibly the helicals. So
I think in the kind of setups that we're dealing with, a professional setup, whether it be touring or one-off event, the most common antennas we're going to see are the paddle, the LPDAs, and the helicals.
Yep.
I'm going to take you out of solo here. Alrighty. So I think our next point we're going to touch on is RF power.
Greg, do we have your mic still? I lost him here.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think we will. Oh, there we go.
Sorry. Power. This is your topic, Arno. If you want to tackle it.
Yeah, I can touch on a little bit. Part
I
of
think
why
Greg, you
I
can
threw
chime in. Oh, sorry.
this in.
We lost Arno again. But yeah, I think Greg too. At some point, you'll chime in on why it's important to manage that when you have so many transmitters on stage.
Yeah. I want to
Or
see.
maybe we'll do that now since Arno.
On our little because a lot of people can't read the power.
So Arno, you're a bit scrambled right now. Do you want to start that over for us?
Yeah, I could start that over. A question you get sometimes is why can't I just run this at the full power that the unit is capable of doing? And the big reason you want to avoid that is something called intermodulation. So as you increase the power of an RF signal, it actually has kind of what we would call maybe harmonics in an audio sense, which it's the same thing. You have harmonics in RF as well. And as you increase the power, you're going to have more and more harmonics, and they're going to be of higher power. So as you increase the power of your transmitter, you're going to fight for bandwidth in terms of being able to cram more transmitters. So why don't you run everything in full power? Because, well, if you don't need to and you have good quality antennas, then run it at the highest power that you need to get the signal. So that's kind of the short version of that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, like I mentioned earlier, proximity to your receivers is also key. So if you're running at a higher power, your minimum distance to your antennas is going to go down. Is actually going to increase as well. So if you're running your whatever 500 series at full power, you might need to actually back away. Like your talent can't come within 30 feet of your RF rack, because you can overpower the receivers and the
Hmm.
microphones.
And in
Um,
your situation, you have a decent amount of transmitters on stage, so that's going to
oh
lower
yeah,
your
we have
threshold as well.
plenty of transmitters on stage, and they're all fighting for it. Um, but yeah, so we talked about antenna placement, uh, batteries, question mark. There's a lot about batteries. We run on Sennheisers in our company. We're on the Evolution series, um, because they're affordable, and we don't have riders in my business, so it doesn't matter. No one knows what they're using. Everyone in my in that I interact with is a college student, high school student, or like semi-pro singer. So they're just happy to have anything better than a wired mic.
But you do get good results with it. So
We get amazing results with we use 935s. We have G4s and G3s. And we went with the Sennheiser over Shure, mainly just because I like the sound of the Sennheisers better. I know that's debatable. And I think the companders inside the Sennheisers are a little bit cleaner, personally, for that range of microphone. Once you get into the Axients and like the QLXDs, then
You're
that's
talking you're talking like handhelds and wireless body pack transmitters, correct? Not
yeah.
IEMs?
Not IEMs. Yeah, correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, not IEMs. We don't deal with IEMs in my business, thankfully. At least not often enough to have to own them ourselves. So we're of the sense of we buy batteries for every show. Um, we don't use the rechargeables, mainly because we would need 2 sets for each show. Our sound checks start at like noon, and our events don't end until midnight. So we pretty much need 12 hours of just straight battery power. So the most reliable solution, we tried wireless, like the Sennheiser rechargeables, and the Energizer and the Panasonics and all the other rechargeable brands, but none of them have really made it through a day. Um, the Energizers have been pretty solid for us, so we use those, and we use the set from before to get through sound check, and then we use a new set for the show every day. So that's kind of our approach with batteries. A battery dying in the middle of the show is the worst thing that could probably happen to you, um, because it just makes you look like an idiot. Because it's something that you're in control of, and buying cheap batteries is is a bad thing. It's a bad practice. You should always buy a reliable power source for your microphones, especially when that's in our world of like the live acapella concerts. That's the only source of sound is the voices. So there's no like drums or like a cool guitar solo that you can like bury it in. If there's a voice missing, it's missing, and everyone's gonna know.
Yeah.
But the Shure stuff with the rechargeable packs, those are really cool and definitely worth it if you can afford it.
yeah, I was just going to interject
100%.
too. For us, the rechargeables made sense because, and I'll get to an example of this show later with Wireless Workbench. But we had this show with God, I forget exactly what the counts were. Let me just check here in my Workbench session. It was 20 channels of Axient and 12 channels of PSM. And they, it was another thing where they wanted to do, their choreograph rehearsals. It was a K-pop show. They want to do their choreograph rehearsals for like 2 hours, and then another 3-hour show, and they were very close to each other in time. And the client actually demanded new batteries each time, so we were going through, on the order of, let's see, there were 32 times 2, 64, 128 battery, double A's in one day. That was a bit ridiculous financially, even if you get a good price on the pro cells. So spending the more money short term on rechargeables is going to save us a lot of hassle long term in terms of, we got to send somebody to CVS or whatever to get batteries, as well as with Shure, those batteries tend to have a longer life than an alkaline battery would.
Yeah, plus they give you a lot of information, which is the nice part
They do.
too, in my opinion. So you're
Yeah,
able to see
sorry.
all the details of how much battery life is left, just right there on your receiver. So that's always a plus.
Yeah. It does give you. I think it will give you a bit of information too, but not as accurate if you're using alkaline. And even if you use the rack mount charger, you can network into them into your wireless Workbench session. I'm not as familiar with the Sennheiser rechargeable products, but I'm sure they have something similar.
They work the same. They're just harder to network.
Yeah.
But another thing I'll add with at least with the Sennheisers, so everyone like looks at the little battery meter in the mics, and something that a lot of people know about that is those are judged off constant current. So even though your batteries are like 1.5 volt AA's, if there's a tolerance that the mic will work it within. So even though they're brand new batteries, they might immediately drop to like 2 bars, which a lot of people complain about in some of the rechargeable alkaline stuff. Um, it's still going to give you the performance of like a new battery. It's just there's like an optimal range that the rechargeable batteries work at, and it's not at the full 3 volt. So it might like work at like 2.8, and then to the microphone, that's like, oh, that's where the 2 bar is. So that's just something to note that a lot of people I would see in forums complaining about the like Panasonic rechargeables, how like they might drop to 2 bars immediately, but then they work for 10 hours. Yeah, that's how they're designed to work. So that's just like a little tidbit about if you do go with the rechargeable batteries, you should measure the constant voltage, or take a voltmeter, measure it, and it's probably still within tolerance for the microphone. If it does immediately drop to like a 2 bar or something like that. Fun facts.
Yeah. So that's batteries. The next thing we want to talk about is even before you get to coordinating your show, you need to know, what bandwidth your gear is going to be operating in, and that is a constantly changing field these days. So Arno, why don't you talk to us about that a little
Yeah,
bit?
so as long as my connection stays stable, here's a perfect example of bandwidth. Recently in the United States, and this is what I'm speaking to since different countries have different regulations, but in the United States, a few things have happened. 2007 and 2011, the FCC auctioned off a whole spectrum of the bandwidth that we had available, which was the 700 megahertz, and that was auctioned off and turned over essentially to cell phone carriers. Now, since then, in 2016, they had another auction and they auctioned off even more. So now we lost pretty much the whole 600 megahertz as well. So the TV repack is ongoing. They're right now, I think, in phase 6 of 10 phases. So they're about halfway through. And right now, you might turn something on and have more bandwidth than you've ever had, mainly because the repack has happened. The TV channels are now in a different spot, and they're opening up a bunch of bandwidth in the 600. But the people who won that auction, so mainly T-Mobile, AT&T, and Comcast, Dish Network, I think, won some. They haven't turned their equipment on yet. So as soon as they do that, you're going to see even less available spectrum for the users of RF mics to be able to use it. So that's why coordination is so critical. And we're kind of constantly fighting this battle of fitting more and more RF devices in less and less spectrum and how we can do that. So yeah, I'm gonna let Greg jump into kind of the how the coordination. So
Yeah, so let me go over some fun examples of why coordination is so important. So my world looks a lot like this. Hopefully this works. Where these photos are all from Google. I don't own them. So you have a bunch of people on stage who don't know how to
Hang on,
hold.
I'm getting the image up still.
All right. So this is a good example of a show that I do. A bunch of people on stage, dancing, moving, questionable mic techniques. This is a nice group where they're all facing one direction, but it's not uncommon where you have a group. Sorry, let's try to be smooth about this. Where you have a group who's standing around someone. All the microphones are pointing different directions. You have people pointing stage left, stage right, upstage. You got the guy in the front. Like I said, I'm a believer in mics in the wing. So that actually is kind of what saved me on this. You have these people who, if the mics are off stage over here, they're the appropriate distance away. But if you remember the pickup pattern for the wing coverage, you're gonna get all of your polarity coverage. I had experience better from the wing. But for coordinating for something like this, you have to be well aware of all your third order and even fourth and fifth order intermods, because you're basically concentrating all of your power from your 18 to 20 transmitters in one spot on stage, and then you can overload your receivers. Here's another example. People in a circle around someone. So this is probably the worst scenario, where it's a ring of people around one person and they're all trying to basically fight for space. So you have to really coordinate for all of your intermods across the board. So what we do to help solve that is I'm going to stop sharing. We split our band between the A and A1 band. So we're like 470 to 415, and then 416 to like, was it 556 or something? I think that number's wrong on the high end. But that basically lets us concentrate. All right, this is the A1 band. We're going to concentrate. Sorry, the camera's backwards. We're going to concentrate everything in this one space and leave everything above it to intermod and everything below to intermod. And then for the A band, we kind of pack it on the high end of the A band, if we can, to allow for everything below it to be kind of like its spot for everything in intermod. So that's kind of how we go about it. And then we run like pretty much our squelch at high all the time, basically because if anything does happen, vocal competition, it just needs to be clean and quiet. So that's kind of the approach we take. Getting into squelch is its own like pseudoscience that we can spend hours on, but we run them in the medium to high range.
A quick basic definition, if you're not familiar, a squelch you can think of as a noise gate.
Yeah. Basically, that's kind of what saves us. So to go about coordinating, I'm going to share again. I have a little RF Explorer dude. He's really fun.
I got one of those too. Yep.
If you don't own one of these and you're a sound engineer that deals with wireless, this is a great Chris Mahana Kwanzaa gift that you could ask for.
I'll just interject real quick on why those are very helpful too. So when I was out with Gus in the fall, we were doing and we were in Houston, and it was the same day as our show was the same day as the World Series, and where our venue was kind of the entertainment sports district. So it wasn't taking place in Houston, but there was a huge viewing setup there. So tons of RF activity, and there was like a gigantic LED wall which can have some RF artifacts that was set up. Like I think it was at least, it was like minimum 25-foot wide. I forget what the height was. It was a big wall. So the way that the Gus in-ear rig was set up, I guess Arno's taking this board of us. Nope. Okay. The way that rig was set up is that it was G-Force Sennheisers, but it was IEMs. So the IEMs by themselves, you can scan, but there was no networking. So basically the best out of that you can get is the group scan. And it'll just give you some open predefined channels. So all of those, it'll give you open channels, but there's still mods happening on it. So no matter what I deployed from that, I was still getting artifacts. So basically what I ended up doing, and I had to do this at a festival one time too, with the same rig, is I opened up my RF Explorer and found a clean space and like there, and hope for the best. So it's really great to be able to visualize what's happening in the spectrum, whether it's through that or a scan.
Yeah, definitely the most useful tool, and I think they sell on Amazon now and dealers. So there's no reason not to get one. I think they used to all be handmade, so hopefully they still are in Canada. But so I use the RF Explorer, and then I go into break. I go into here we go, Clear Waves. Just because Windows. I think Mac has a different app for RF Explorers.
Yeah, I use Touchstone.
While you get that up, I do want to answer a question
about
this. You can also use the Workbench and Shure scanner. So ours rig was a Sennheiser. You can use that. Our rig was a Sennheiser rig. Even if you put those numbers in, I've been having problems getting it to calculate good frequencies. But there's a whole conversion process from an RF Explorer. And also remember, it's a club tour. It's just me, and I have a thousand other things that need to happen in a short period of time. So the best way for that to, I don't have time to be sitting around and file, format converting. So the easiest way for me is to just, make a good educated guess and hope it sticks.
The other thing is with the lower end Sennheiser stuff, even Sennheiser doesn't support the coordination stuff in their software. It's like if you go into the Sennheiser stream manager or wireless manager, terrible software. But
Honestly, yeah, it is.
they don't even have the 100 series or the lower end stuff listed as devices. You have to manually enter it. So thanks Sennheiser for supporting your own gear. But I use Clearwaves because I can export my scan in a wireless Workbench format without having to do the whole comma replace thing. So I scanned this like an hour ago at my house. This is just a spectral scan. I wasn't doing any kind of
Let me pop this up on the screen. Sorry,
limit
I've
or
been
anything.
slacking off here as the host.
Yeah, I didn't put any TV chart. I don't even move my camera, just do a monitor. I didn't put any TV channels in. I just did a scan. Pretty nice. I like to use 86, 85 as a threshold. Yeah. But obviously, I wouldn't use anything that looks like it's like a TV station or anything broadcasting. The biggest issue you'll usually come across are TV stations, and you can identify a TV station because they take up pretty much exactly 6 megahertz bandwidth. So I took this and then I exported it for Workbench. And then I took the file into Workbench. Is this gonna right? This thing's by app. Let me do my screen share for Workbench. Take the file into Workbench, and then it's sharing now, right, Rob?
Yep. Yeah. It gives you like a 3, 2, 1 countdown, so it takes a second.
So
There
I
we
took
go.
it to Workbench, and then in Workbench is where I do all of my TV channel stations. I do my inventory in Workbench. I don't use the Sennheiser 500 series, so I can't just do the scan off of the receivers. I think you can do it on the 300 series as well, but
It's important to note too that some of these products, even though they're the same, manufacturer, they might have different what's the word I'm looking for? Operating bandwidths too,
yep.
or efficiency. So you can't. It's harder to just substitute one for another.
Right. Even between the 3 and the 4s, the Gen 3 and 4s, the 4s got a little more efficient. But for example, Workbench doesn't have G4s in it, so I just use the G3 one because I also have G3s, so it just kind of saves me a little bit. And then you import your file, you define your TV stations. So I don't know if this is gonna show up. Yeah. So sorry, 4K scaling. So you define your TV stations. You can look them up with a website if you want to confirm that all of them are done, because sometimes this database is out of date. It does update regularly, but sometimes like Arno was saying, stations go on and offline all the time for no reason. Well, for reasons, but they go on and offline all the time.
Yeah, and to that point, I don't want to
Just
cut you
reasons
off,
that
but
aren't known to us.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's part of the repack. So things are going to go off air, come back on somewhere else, etc. So it's constantly right now the landscape's changing
Right.
daily, pretty much. So just keep that in mind.
For a big show,
I want
it's
to
good to
bring up
check.
Ankit's comment here that yes, you can make a profile for it, but like I said, I was having problems getting that to work correctly. So when I would
Right.
like import a scan, it would just pack all four channels on the same frequency.
So
So
to
I
that
don't know what was
point,
going on with that.
so I have A1 band, for example. But if you go into Workbench and you go to sorry, I need to make a new one. I'll do it later. But anyways, if you go to Workbench, you go to Sennheiser and you go to the 100 series, for example, they don't list A1 as an option, so I had to custom make the A1. So yes, you can add them, and they do stay, and it does have a nice memory. And then you can just copy the settings from a different generation over. So I did do that for this because A1 wasn't in Workbench. So this is my setup. These red boxes appear. These are the TV stations that it said were my area. I confirmed that with, you can go to the FCC site and also check. You can also use the Sennheiser or the Shure frequency finder tools. if you ever have an issue with wireless and you email Sennheiser and Shure and you tell them your frequencies, they'll send you a nasty email saying you were in a TV band. Even though you checked and you made sure that nothing was there, they'll still tell you that you're wrong. Fun fact. And this is my operating space. So you can see these are kind of your holes. And then, you import your inventory. So 9 and 9 on the A and A1 band. You do your calculate. It does a thing. It comes back and says something's angry. And then you can kind of go in and deal with that as a one-off. Like I said, finding 18 channels with like the lower end Sennheiser stuff is kind of hard. Just because of how inefficient it is. You can definitely get cleaner signal with a higher end product. But like I said, we deal with mainly college students and high schoolers singing. So buying, a $40,000 wireless system doesn't really make sense for our business, but your business might be a little bit different, but it is possible. And I just want to let you guys know it's possible if you are in the business of, you're not dealing with A1 acts who don't have crazy riders. You can make it happen with, the lower end prosumer stuff. But the principles for coordinating your frequencies and making sure everything's clean, setting everything up properly, using the right antennas and right antenna placement, no matter what line of product you're using, if you do any one of those things wrong, you're going to have issues. So
So you had a point there about using third-party combiners and antennas. Do you want to talk about
yeah.
that while we're talking about that?
Yeah. So when we were building our rig, we were like, oh, do we save the few $100s and go with the RFNU stuff? We didn't for the Sennheiser stuff, just because the Sennheiser stuff, luckily the combiners also give power. Yes, the RFNU stuff has the little power adapters, but that's another cable to like fall out or fail or something. I liked it that over the BNC was power and signal. But with the RFNU stuff, they make really cool antennas that kind of are like multi-solution antennas. So they have the diversity fin that I really like, where it's one antenna, so you're not traveling with two, and it gives you coverage on both axes. It's a diversity fin. So it's a diversity antenna for your diversity receiver. So your A channel is on a horizontal plane, and your your A channel's on a horizontal plane, and then your B channel's on a vertical plane. So you're always guaranteed some correct polarity. It's kind of like a ghetto helical, without the like dB gain on a helical that you get. But that's one of my favorite antennas. Fun facts.
Yeah. I can't tell if Arno's frozen there or not. It looks like he is, and he's very
That's like
deep in thought.
No, I'm listening intently.
Yeah, why don't you give us your opinion on using third party and
Yeah, I think a lot of the RF venue stuff out there is great. They have some really great combiners, and I definitely recommend if that's an option, and maybe the Shure stuff isn't, and that is, I would jump on that. For the same token, if you have the budget, then there's stuff that PWS makes that's the next level up. But be ready to spend maybe 3 times as much or more.
So what's interesting is that on the RFNU website, the combined 4 antenna combiner, I don't know if you remember, but we've had some problems where there's been some noise. They tell you can combine 2 of them to make the 8-channel one that would be $3,000 from Shure or PWS. And we were having these weird problems where, so the way it would be set up, it would be like PSM, PSM, combiner, PSM, PSM, and then the little passive cable, which is what they tell you can do. I found that if you actually put those 2 combiners together, they don't provide enough isolation just from the chassis and stuff. So you actually have to separate those to combine to make an 8-channel combiner. So I think that's an interesting thing. But yeah, no, it's definitely, as if you're looking at a budget standpoint, the RFNU stuff definitely makes a lot of sense. I really wish somebody would make an 8-channel combiner or distributor that was kind of more budget conscious. Just because if for someone like me, I'm trying to put rigs together that fly, or use sometimes as well. It's killing two full U on if I need to have more than 4 channels of IEMs combined, is kind of a deal breaker.
Yeah, I mean, Sennheiser has the half rack, so
Yeah,
you could always go with that.
that's
Or
true
if you have
too.
a lot
Yeah,
of money, you can get their 8000 series and get 8 channels and a 6U.
Yeah.
I love that they're calling me a Muppet in the chat. That's good.
But
nice guys.
But yeah, I definitely like the RF venue stuff. I think they're doing some cool stuff. They definitely like to educate people more than like sell you a product, which I like. Um, like I said, if you have an issue with Sennheiser, and I've got it with Shure too, um, they like to be like, I'm the expert and you're wrong, so I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And like, there's really no education that comes out of it if they do discover something. So the RFNU guys I've always had a cool relationship with, where it's like, hey, I'm doing this thing and it's not really working the right way. Do you have any thoughts? And then they're like, this is a cool problem that I want to help you solve, more than like, you're an idiot, you need to fix yourself and then come bother me. That's my personal really like response that I've gotten from some support people at the bigger companies. Um, even being someone who sells equipment for the companies. But yeah.
Cool. So why don't we move on to I think this is kind of a Greg specific one, but working with talent and getting them to use the RF correctly and
Yeah.
the
So
2.4 band.
the nice thing with like Robert and Arno with your tours, and getting them up to speed with their in-ear systems and all that. I have a very short interaction with our talent. In the competition world, they pre-prepare a 12-minute performance and they have 15 minutes to sound check it, and I have 20 minutes to talk to everyone in the room about how to use microphones. So I pretty much spend 15 minutes on how to hold the microphone, why it's important. The antenna is not the handle. Cupping the mic's not the right technique and stuff like that. But the biggest thing is like making sure that they're holding the microphone in the right position, and that they're doing the right thing for the microphone during the performance, is a really big thing to go over it with like newer talent on wireless. Um, if any one of those things of the ABCs fail or like is kind of sketchy, having talent introducing their own variables to it isn't going to help at all. So one of the biggest issues we run into are hands over the antennas, and then they decided that they want to sing part of their set off stage, and you kind of just have to deal with it. So then you're like, all right, well, if you're gonna be off stage, you have to be in this area because we're trying to maintain line of sight. Like, just be upfront about the limitations with your systems if they have them. And you're the engineer, they're not. So like, if there's something that's technical that is preventing you from doing something, just I mean, I've always had good experiences just being like, hey, that's not possible, or we don't have time for that, we can do this instead. Like, one of the groups wanted to start in the lobby and come down through the aisle, which it's not my position to say artistically that's a terrible idea. But I could be like, that's not how the system works. You have to either be on stage or you can do it from
And
the
just in terms of having that many mics open in front of your PA.
exactly. There's other reasons, but from a wireless reason, that's not going to work. Um, and communicating with the venue is also really important. There's a venue that we work in every year that has a planetarium across the street, and the planetarium people use wireless systems. And in the middle of the show last year, the planetarium people came over to the venue, and there's like, so we just started our planetarium show, and singing started coming over the PA system. So during sound checks, I do a scan. They didn't have any of their equipment powered on. So when it came to be showtime, my wireless system was much more powerful than their rinky-dink, I don't know, like Asden wireless system. So it just destroyed it, and they got a whole bunch of singing coming through PA. So even if it's like a small university or like a private venue that you don't really think anything else be going on, having those conversations with the venue up front is like, hey, 18 mics, these are the range. Give them your mic plot, and your frequency chart. That's a really important thing, just to like at least cover yourself. That's pretty much the biggest thing in the game, is just covering yourself, making sure that you have all of your ducks in a row. Talent's not going to cover the mic antenna. They're not going to go into a space on stage that's not covered, and you're not going to like start blasting, singing through a PA that's across the street when they start doing their drum circle at 8 o'clock at night.
Why don't we talk about the 2.4 gigahertz band? Because that's, more and more manufacturers are releasing products that are in that range. But as kind of professionals, that would scare us because we also know that Wi-Fi exists there, or the range that provides. It's not the companion or whatever. Is not going to be ideal. So why don't you talk about that a little bit, both of you?
No, is my answer. We get that a lot with groups wanting to buy gear. And they're like, hey, I saw that on Sweetwater, or sorry, I don't know if we're supposed to say company names. I saw on
Too late.
Seltzer Water that they're selling SSV series, whatever, for like $200. Can we buy 18 wireless mics and have a concert and you just come in and mix it and not charge us for mic rentals? And the answer is no. Why is that? Well, everyone owns one of these things. And all of these have radios in them that operate in the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz range. And as soon as a room of 800 people walk in, you now have 800 interference devices between you and your microphones. So it's a terrible idea, and I don't know why you would ever do it. Personally.
It's funny. We've actually had a couple of, I think it's one particular, I'm not going to say any names, but one particular pretty high profile artist that brought their own I think it was two 2.4 gig instrument wirelesses. Got away with it somehow, I guess, and I'm sure they programmed those away from the common Wi-Fi channels. There's not many people that are going in and paying attention to what channel their router is set to be operating on. So I'm sure they try to give some consideration into shifting those away, but still in general, I think it's kind of the mass opinion that that's not really a product you're going to have too high density of, or if you want a particularly reliable result with.
Yeah, you're better using quarter waves on 20 channels than 2.4.
100%. Yeah.
Personally, I mean, if you're like a gym or something, I don't know if you have those kind of people here, and like you're like a Zumba instructor, like go for it. But if you're talking more than like 3 channels or like 4 channels and less than 200 people, maybe you can get away with it and be pretty confident. But I wouldn't trust it anywhere professional. Also, they don't have a lot of bandwidth, so it sounds really crappy, and you have
They do compress it quite a lot, yeah.
or anything. So
Yeah.
It's interesting that kind of, and I think I forget who's those Guitar World rig rundowns. I forget whose it was. I don't know if it was 2.4 necessarily. It might have been like just an early. I think it was Angus Young, has this device in his rig, that mimics the sound of the companding of like the early Nady units, even though they use Axients. And that device came about because they I think it was while they were recording Back in Black. I forget the exact details, but he was missing something out of his sound in the studio, and they discovered that the sound of like the early Nady wireless was like part of his tone, and somebody made this box that like replicates that companding in that filtering.
That's interesting.
that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know with all the frequency stuff, people are looking back at like, is UHF a viable option too? So we'll probably see some more
Do you
of that.
mean VHF?
Yeah, sorry, it's VHF. We're already in UHF.
Similar looking shape.
So that would be interesting to see more of that coming back, and if anyone really starts developing for that.
Yeah, I
again.
mean, there's definitely devices out there.
Right.
Just I look at Radioactive Designs as being one. They are, they make intercom systems essentially that operate in
Right.
VHF.
That's cool.
It's again a James Staffo project, and that's something that he came along because he realized, hey, look at all this space that's perfectly legal for us to use, and no one's using it. And he's the first. Him and his partners are the first ones that really jumped into that, and I think more and more people, manufacturers, are going to start going that way.
Yeah.
So we'll see. There are a couple questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to throw them up, Grooney.
Sure. Do you want to just point out which ones you want me to throw up for you?
Yeah. So Jonathan asked, kind of like what happens if mid-show you start getting interference. Yeah. So, and kind of, yes, I mean, it can happen. It has happened. It will happen, and it's going to happen more and more. Best way to do it is, obviously coordinate spare frequencies. Be ready with some extras. Just be as prepared as you can. That's one of those you don't have control over, but you can control the results. So if it does drop out or you are getting interference, be ready with
Yeah.
the backup.
So what's
Be
interesting about
ready
that
to
is
jump with the
what
Axients to a new frequency.
So what's interesting, what I had to do with that, on the Gus store, we had 4 channels, 5 packs. The TM was on a pack. I would, make note of whatever there were, when you do the group scan, that there was an extra open frequency.
Oh yeah.
But I know there was no way, and I tried once or twice to get our guy that was side stage to learn how to change channels, and he was just not having it. This is beyond my job of settling the show. I don't give a shit. So what ended up happening is he did have a pack that was on Q mode, and so our arrangement is if somebody had an in-ear problem, he would give them the pack and they could just scroll through to somebody else's mix that was clean.
Mm.
And that's just how it had to be because I
Yep.
couldn't get that cooperation. So and it did happen once or twice as well, and still nothing changed. So it's interesting. Having a way out is always your best option.
Yeah, and someone mentioned in the comments, that was Teddy actually. It never hurts, and it's totally fair game to ask the venue, like, hey, we're coming into a lot of wireless. Have you guys done any scans recently? What do you guys typically coordinate for? That's a fair question, and that doesn't make you look bad in any way.
Right.
You never want to show up and start doing your coordination with everything else going on.
Yeah.
Usually some kind of plan of attack ahead of time is good. Sometimes you have to just scan once you get there and you pray a little bit, but it never hurts to email. We were at PlayStation last year, and I was like, hey, what's the wireless situation? Do you guys have channels that you guys kind of like tune to or like reserve? A lot of the New York venues kind of coordinate in inner company wise to just not overstep anyone. And it's a lot of just planning ahead of time.
Yeah, I think if the very first venue you coordinate wireless in New York is the PlayStation Theater, you get the wrong idea of what New York is actually like. 'Cause that's a very clean building, just because you're in a basement.
Yeah. I do remember, Gruny, you and I did that gig in
Oh
Times
god,
Square.
I was thinking about pulling that up, that Primal Workbench file, and I was like, no,
I was
I don't
about
have
to
the
say, I was like,
memories.
I have it too. I was looking at it. I was like, oof. Like, I do remember that. And we had to coordinate with, they had another setup upstairs, remember? And I was running
Yeah,
back
yeah.
and
And
forth.
the XYZ company guy came in and was like bothering me at the absolute wrong time. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But so that's the big thing about frequency coordination. It's also, juggling a little bit of, the different client needs in a way. Did a event in Rockefeller Center for K Sound as well, and
yeah,
they had a second stage somewhere else, and it was, interfacing with them as well as interfacing with, um, the production manager from the bands that were playing, etc., and kind of making sure that they realized, hey, we're gonna only have this many. You're gonna have to turn off you know, your transmitters until they're done, kind of thing. And that's
yeah.
sometimes the game you have to play. Is
Yeah, I remember it was in downtown Manhattan one time, and I forget exactly what the situation was, but the no, the headliners had their own RF, and there was one of our guys was coordinating it. And what happened is because we turned the headliner stuff off and kind of overstepped our stuff, but when that switch happened, he didn't shut our stuff off but turned their stuff on. So we had an MC mic that was happening while their stuff was powered back up, and I
Yep.
wasn't getting it. But then the headliner had their own console was like, "Hey, dude, I'm getting down my channel here. Hang on a sec." Um,
Yeah.
and so we got it.
Um,
Ankit had a good question or a good point to bring up. Radios and comms. So that brings me to back to 2.4 for a second, because ClearComm is a huge part. Wireless ClearComm is a huge part of productions now, and that I believe is on the 2.4 band as well.
they do have options in
And
2.4, so
and
that'd be
similarly, events like that will also have some kind of company coming in to do a mass Wi-Fi distribution. So getting that figured out is also going to be
yeah,
an
and
issue.
that would be then over dedicated channels, etc. So there are ways to make that work, and you do have more control over RF like that. There are
Right,
certain companies
then
that just have a little
line
pedal that you
six.
put on your pedal board that you just hit scan on. Doesn't quite do the trick as well. So
Right.
um, Also,
just wanted to bring that up that tends to exist in that,
yeah,
even
and
though
you
we
have to
kind of shun that area, but it does exist there
you have to take
professionally.
into account too, to his point, like radios. You have a crew walk in with radios,
Oh yeah,
and got to make sure that you're not stepping on those or those aren't stepping on you. Um, and beyond that, there's just a lot cramming a very small space now. So, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Public safety. That's to that point. That's fortunately a lot of the public safety stuff has gone up to like the 800 band, which we've been out of. But if you're talking about like radios on a festival site that are for safety of the patrons, that is something that obviously needs to get precedent over pretty much anything else.
right.
yeah.
So
Let's actually talk about festivals for a second, because I don't know about you, but one of the things that I do when I'm advancing a festival and I'm carrying wireless is in my rider that I'll send to them, or my advance email, I have 4 channels of Sennheiser A-band ears, and I give that to your frequency coordinator so that when I show up, you can give me just a sheet that has those numbers on it. I don't how do you handle advancing a festival that you're carrying wireless to?
yeah, I mean that's it. There's really
Yeah,
no
that's
two
basically
ways
it.
around it. You're
Yeah,
giving your information to someone and they're telling you exactly where you're putting it, and you have to give them the dates, or I mean the day that you're playing, the times that it's going to be
yeah,
turned on, the times that you're done. If you're carrying two-way radios, you have to give them that information and what your frequencies are for those that you can jump to, and they'll tell you a frequency. You're going to be on channel 3 on those radios. That's it. However it's set up. Um,
yeah.
I mean, I have been to a festival where there isn't any RF coordinator.
Me
Um,
too.
and I think we're at the same one there, Gurney.
I think we were. Yeah.
and
That's one of the first times I had to get my Explorer out and be like, "Well, we're gonna plug these numbers right in here and see
yeah,
how it
and
works."
and the good thing is, I mean, we were using Axients for that, and we had kind of what we needed above
Yeah.
and beyond what was even there. So,
Yeah.
we had plenty of frequencies to choose from, and just yeah, it's a chess game in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
using the tools that are out there, you can solve a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
And I know we had said before, it's not black magic or voodoo or abracadabra. There is science. It is physics in much the same way audio is, um, and we can solve the problems. It's just having the right tools to do it. So that's the big thing.
Yeah, it's interesting when you said radios. That even at if you get into the larger festivals, a lot of people are carrying like road ready radios. Getting the radios from them. So at this one festival in particular, Road Radios was there doing their own coordination, working with PWS and interact. I forget exactly what the details of how they were doing it were, but that was PWS was working in conjunction with Road Radios because there were so
Hmm.
many packages from them there.
Yep.
Um, and I forget if we had to give them back to them for them to be reprogrammed or something. But I remember there was some kind of deal where we had to go back and give them to them for something. I forget exactly what happened there, but yeah, so that does to get taken into consideration too. I want to address the Bon Jovi question about riders. Let me see if I can
I
get
think
to
Ted had
that.
mentioned that we're going to hold off on
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah.
did he?
He
Yeah,
said-
because he
Yeah.
wants Kay to help with answering that
Now,
one.
I'll just
But
mention.
basically, with K specifically, we have PSM1000s and Axients, so it's generally not an issue for us.
Just real
And
quick,
that's all we have.
just
Go
because
ahead, Greg.
I had to deal with this, getting our own setup with a certain company. Um, if they're sponsored with at least our company that we work with, trying to not say it. I know Shure will pretty much provide if
Yeah.
needed, like
Yeah,
fits it well enough. Um, not everyone's as friendly, but it doesn't hurt to contact a local dealer who has the right contacts from that company to get it provided in some means if they're truly sponsored with the company.
yeah. Or have the artist management provide you with their contact.
Yeah,
True.
that's the biggest thing with artist endorsements. If
Yeah,
they're required to have something,
yeah.
then that actually is not the job of the audio provider, in my opinion.
Right. Do you remember with the Rock Center gig too? I don't know if you ever saw those riders, but one of the bands, all the players had endorsement deals, and in that rider there was a link to their contacts
Yep.
or the contact information for each guide, for Porters and Davies and for DW and Yamaha, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
If they're saying
So
they're
yeah,
endorsed and they're not providing it or not giving you a means to get it provided, they just prefer it and they're being drama queens. Unless
Yeah.
it's a weird obscure thing like Audio Technica endorsements. I don't know. So their new wireless isn't terrible, and I do have hopes for that.
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah.
Are there any
So why
other
don't we move on to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Are there any
Finish your
other
thought.
questions you want to throw up while we're kind of digging through some of these, Grooney?
Questions.
How do you handle a situation where there aren't open usable frequencies? Do you scan again, or do you forget it and go wired? That's not always an option. Like for IEMs, that's our show. We with my tour, there's a click that can't come through wedges. Obviously.
I mean, there's obviously
So
wired IEM packs.
yeah, there are wired IEM packs, but like if we're out and it's 4 o'clock or something
Yeah.
happens, it's but there is always a way to make it work. So that brings me into the slide that I want to share, which is just a wireless workbench session. Talking is hard. So let me bring this up here. And so this is from a K-pop show in New York from about a year ago. Hold your comments, everybody. Showing stream. Here we go. So I'm not an RF guru by any means, but I'll just walk you guys through how I do this when we're using our Shure stuff. So this is the first page. The band is called At Ease, Brooklyn, whatever. So this show was 8 Axient body packs, 12 handhelds, and 12 IEMs, and they were just all on all the time. So the first thing I'll do is we'll go in and populate. I will always do what's the word I'm looking for? Drawing a blank, but auto IPs basically.
Oh.
DHCP. I will always put all of our stuff on DHCP. Sometimes it is worth noting we will get a writer that asks for, if they have their own RF, their monitor engineer does RF. They will say, can you please set this unit to this IP address and have a static because they have a file they want to work with. Yeah, sure, whatever. That takes 2 seconds. Fine, I'll do that. But for the most part, I leave these on DHCP, so they just auto-populate. Flash through, title everything. That's important. So you can see, if you guys don't know this already, if you're numbering things, always add the zeros in the single digits so it lines up properly. After that, so we will do our frequency coordination. I just use the scan. That works well for me. So this is the scan from the Axient. This is Brooklyn, so it's pretty dense there, and I also have 32 channels that I got to fit in. And it took a couple of times to find a combination that works. So these are all on G57 and G10, which is not always ideal, but that's what we had. Got to make it work. So I did put the Axients into high density mode, and that did help. Again, we're talking about pretty elite features here, but basically, so I'll do the scan, analyze, calculate. And one of the things you need to pay attention to here is I will often look at the scan first before I start blanking out TV channels. I know some people don't do that, but because they can come back on. But if there's something that's really close and it's like a major thing, I will do that. But I want to start by leaving myself a decent amount of room. I will play this scan exclusion threshold a little bit sometimes. So if I'm looking at like a long sustained, bump like this, so this obviously I want to be excluded. But something maybe like I had an example before, and I don't remember where exactly it was, where I could maybe drop the threshold a little bit. Something like this, where it's a plateau and it's obviously really some kind of usable stuff toward the tail. I will maybe play that number up or down a little, like 1 dB. Oh, exclusion. I'm sorry, I was playing the wrong one. Actually, no. I was thinking of a different file because then that puts that out of exclusion. I'm sorry. This is a different
Yeah,
file.
and to that point, that's
That
a TV channel there, so I wouldn't try to step on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of a different file. but it was something else. It wasn't a TV channel. It was just a long plane of noise, but it was just a kind of a high level noise. It definitely wasn't a TV channel because it didn't have like the little bump at the front. TV channels usually will have, I believe, that little tail at front end.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
the pilot.
You can see.
Typically.
Yeah. Again, not an RF guru. Sue me if I'm wrong, but I'm just, this is stuff that's worked for me. So, obviously this area here, I don't know why I didn't stuff there. So I do analyze, calculate, assign, deploy, drag the stuff in. It'll give you stars to indicate the quality. That means that all of those channels will work, even if it's a 1-star frequency, and sometimes you have to kind of eat it and use a 1-star frequency. But I will tend to prioritize my leads on the 3-star ones, stuff like that. It's just it's closed noise is usually what the lower quality rating is. So I'll do that. I'll use some backup frequencies. So let's just say, and I have done this, so it might give me some incompatibilities, but right now everything is compatible. Well, let's just say calculate new frequencies. And it's saying, yep, analyze. It's saying, oh, you know why? Because hang on. They're all locked is why. So they're just going to the same spot.
You can hit the button there at the top left, Groony. It'll unlock all of them for you.
Oh, yes, it does. See, I learn something new every day. No, it's just... Oh, yes, that one.
That one, yes.
See, not an RF genius.
Boom.
So we're all learning. Unlocked all. So we'll try that again. Calculate. And it's just gonna... So you can see down there, 24 through 36. I do give it, tell it to do some backup frequencies as you want. We don't have the ADX stuff, but in this gig, I was the RF tech. So if something needed to happen, I could just, make a change. 25 to 36. So it's still, you get the idea. And maybe I'll have everybody else talk through how they do their coordination because I am not a good example. Do not do what I do. I'm just talking to hear myself speak.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really screwed, you can always. I mean, this is a terrible way to do it. And I've definitely had to do it before. But if all your other channels are good and you're just looking for one clean channel and you don't have a lot of time, the radios inside of the receivers, when you change the frequencies, are typically act like it's a live change. So if you just need to like dial through like all of the bands and just like wait until the your meters drop or like go away to be clean, it's definitely good to check once you've changed that frequency that nothing's on it or nothing can come on it. But if you're like down in the dirts, those changing the frequency on the front of at least the Sennheisers, it's a live change. So you can pretty much live scan with your eyes if you absolutely need to.
Yeah, and we're talking down in the dirt techniques. Like if there was real RF, like a real heavy duty, like heavy hitter RF dude here, he'd probably be shooting us all in the face.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't ask about the
path
that are in my rack.
Another little trick that I've done in the past, and this is after
I'm gonna
you've
take myself out of solo here.
coordinated.
Because we're done looking at my Fakakta way of doing this.
So something I've done, and it works pretty well when you're kind of just trying to make sure that what you've coordinated maybe a couple hours ago before sound check is still good, and doors are open. You got a half hour until everyone's hitting the stage, and you just want to make sure that everything that you coordinated is still solid. Staffo calls it a RF war game, and pretty much he'll take all his transmitters. So he takes his wireless mics, and he looks at all of them. They should all still be on, and he'll flip them off. So just turn it off, let your signal disappear, and look, if you're getting signal, once you turn that number 1 off and you're getting signal at number 1, you got a problem. So, but let's say it's dark, flip it back on, go to number 2, turn on number 2, or turn off number 2. No signal, good, go to number 3. Turn it back on, turn off 3. So you kind of go through that. Should only take a few minutes, really. What does it take? 6-7 seconds to turn it off and turn it back on again. But that's a quick way to check, just to take a quick look, see if you have any signal coming in when that microphone's off. If there is, you're gonna have to find an open frequency.
Yeah, I want to throw up Jonathan's question here about what if you don't have can't afford an RF scanner, are there any other resources to check the local frequencies?
If you have a
So,
wireless, you have
the RF Explorer is pretty reasonably priced, so it should be possible, and it's a pretty invaluable tool. But yeah, there are Shure on their website has a frequency finder. I think most of them do. They're not numbers that are specific, but they will give you a place to start. I'll just
yeah,
say
those
as an
most
anecdote,
actually.
I just said all that stuff about the scans and all that, but I did have to do like on tour because the way that rig was set up, I had to do the group scan and use the B group channel 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever,
Yeah,
and play it from there,
most
and that should get you in a good
frequency
spot as well.
most frequency agile units nowadays have a scanning capability on them. So if you're doing IEMs,
Whether or
it's
not you
on the
can see it,
pack. Say it again.
whether or not you can actually see the spectrum or not,
Oh yeah,
they
you
can
might not
scan
be
it.
able to see the spectrum. That's it
Right.
doesn't matter if you can't see it. But if you can go in and you grab your IEM pack and you hit scan on there, you're able to then find open frequencies. You'll find a band of open frequencies. Same thing on receivers. Turn on your receiver. There's usually a scan option on it. You're gonna have to open your manual. I know it's a terrible thing to have to do sometimes, but go in and look how to scan it. It'll give you an option, and you're going to be able to just pull that band. The reason actually you're going to have frequencies separated into bands on those receivers is because those are frequencies that play nice together without intermodulation. So if you are scanning right on the front of your unit, try to keep all your stuff in one band. They do that on purpose. So if you have 6 open frequencies in a band, pop those 6 in and call it a day. 9 times out of 10, you'll be just fine. So that's if you don't have all the tools and you just got to scan some channels, there you go.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say real quick too is when you're doing scanning, and you would think it'd be a common sense thing, but I think we're all guilty of it, is make sure that your other transmitters and receivers are off or not transmitting,
Been
because
there.
I can't tell you how many times I've done a scan and been like, Jesus Christ, there's no room here at all. And then I look down and like see all these blinking lights, like, ah, crap.
Yeah,
Yeah, rescan, turn
that
all
is
these off,
one
and then, oh, I
benefit
have all the room in the world.
having the RF Explorer, and I hook it up to a program called Touchstone, which is the Mac version of what Greg was showing us earlier. I'll see it right away and be like, "Whoa, something's not right." I've a way like you're able to tell right away what is just a TV channel and some RF noise versus filling up the whole spectrum with your channels. So you'll notice pretty quick. I mean, at least I have. You notice pretty quick. You're like, yeah,
Yeah,
something's not right. Let me go flip these off.
right.
Okay, these aren't muted or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
But
And
also
even stuff, do you want to talk about, let's just talk, finish your thought and then we'll move on to troubleshooting.
scan and you are turning on your transmitters and you're like coordinating them and you're like, this one's good, and I'm gonna leave this one on, and then you're gonna like do your next scan. Don't leave that one right in front of your antennas either. That's gonna raise your entire noise floor of your
Hmm.
RF, and it's gonna also throw off your scan. So if it's done, put it away across the stage, across the room, where the talent's gonna be. Is probably the best place to put it.
And
Uh, yep.
sorry, go ahead. I'll
So
let you
yeah,
finish.
don't leave your transmitter right in front of the receiver and then do your next scan. Um, it's also gonna ruin your day.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to further a little bit more on doing your scans, my usual move is I'll do an indoor and an outdoor scan. Um, Not everyone does that, but that's just a way to really see your TV frequencies. You step outside, you can grab them all. Again, what you pull from the Shure website or whatever might not be 100% accurate based on what's been moved. So, indoor and then outdoor.
Yeah. I haven't done that, and my rationale behind that is because um, I'm more concerned about what's happening where the transmitters or receivers are going to be. But don't discount doing that if you really need to see what's going on
I
and
just like to be able to
want
see the
to
TV
really
channels.
see. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah. So that's just my, we're all here to
If you're
share
an
our stupid
installer,
point of views.
100%, you should do that for your
Yeah,
clients.
and don't yeah, like I said, don't listen to me. I'm just here to moderate and provide my own weirdo point of views. Yeah, so just to clarify, I wasn't calling your point of views weird. I'm calling myself.
I don't know which
Um,
version I have. Someone's asking which version
oh,
it is.
here, pop that up.
Um, it looks like this.
Yeah,
uh,
the
yeah,
same
I
on.
think
Mine's downstairs. I can't.
I don't
I
know if it's
grabbed it.
3G version. I know I could do Wi-Fi scanning as well as
You
do
would do it.
do any scanning kind of. I could probably look it up. I just don't remember what. I knew it was going to cover me what I needed, so that's why I got it.
Cool. Let's maybe talk about troubleshooting and how you troubleshoot your RF.
Can you give us an area?
All right. Well,
What kind
I'll
of
just tell an
trouble?
I'll tell you an anecdote, and that will be my way of talking through my troubleshooting method. So we're doing this gig in Hoboken. Artist doesn't matter. And it was 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 channels Veers and some Axients. And the Axients were coming up fine. Monitor guy is there, and it was one of our guys, and he's got it. Pops his ears in, puts his ears in the pack, turns it on. Oh, this is so noisy. We need to scan, and we kept rescanning and rescanning, and we're like, well, and we popped, Workbench up, and everything's clean. We're putting these frequencies, but everything's still super noisy. What's going on? And then finally, I look over at the combiner and realize that the combiner
It's
is turned
off,
off.
isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah. So start in one place, and I think this applies to everything. But the way I will troubleshoot stuff. Another quick anecdote as well is I think it was one of these K-pop shows. We did a few of these last year. Is everything I did find a space for everything. And the front of house guy was just kept complaining that there was noise on one of the channels. Oh, it's the RF. Rescan, scan again, scan again. And I'm confident that that it's fine. So finally, I run over to him. I grab, and the talent had provided the actual headset elements for the body packs. And I grab the guy and I say, "Do you have another spare? Give me that." And swapped out, and he just had a bad cable on his headset.
Yeah.
So actually work through your source and don't just assume this is some massive problem. Start with your cabling at one end
Signal
and work your way
flow
back. Yeah.
doesn't change just because now you're in a different realm and you're looking at, wireless. Signal flow still matters. So it could be an antenna cable. It's all the same stuff. It's just now it's a little bit of a different. You probably
Steve,
did.
no, I did.
Um,
I put them right together. Yeah.
so it's still just know your signal flow. Know what you need to get to make sure your signal's coming in, and start with the mic element. Sometimes that's what it is. So troubleshooting wise, I don't know why you're making faces, Greg.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm doing something, and then I have like my work laptop over here, and something funny just popped up over there. Sorry, I had to dip away like a minute ago to look at something over there, so sorry about that.
No, yeah, just
we wouldn't have known if you didn't say anything. So that's on you.
I needed to explain it.
no, but signal flow wise, just it's the same stuff. It's just now you're using some invisible waves instead of all cable. So
Yeah, they're virtual cables.
Yeah. And really, you're only eliminating you're adding one step when you think about troubleshooting your signal flow.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is still the same as a mic, DI, any other input.
Yep.
Another thing I'll say, it's really important and it's really easy to cheap out on, is get the right cable. It's
Yes.
50 ohm spec for a reason, not 75. So that's the biggest thing that drives me crazy. You lose gain on your cable in general, depending on how long it is. But if you're using a 75 ohm cable instead of 50 ohm, you're gonna lose a lot faster. Yep. So use the right cables. Don't buy cheap stuff. We bought a cheap set of just the 3-foot jumpers to stay in the racks, and they all popped off like in a month. So
yeah,
good connectors, 50 ohm cable, 50,
Yeah.
75. Don't trust Amazon.
Yeah, and it's the actual BNC connector is different. I forget I believe the 50 ohm has a little white insert around the pin as well.
Probably.
And the 75 does not.
I think it depends on the brand of connector, but
the Neutrik ones at least, or not Neutrik. The what's the not
Belden?
Canary? I think it is the Belden. All the 50 ohm ones that we've gotten from Shure, the definite 50 ohm ones have had the insert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying. It's not Amphenol. Canon, I think it is.
Oh yeah.
Like that. So yeah, that's a good way to check, and obviously look at the cable
or make your own.
Yeah, that is super important. For a while, the people would just grab our BNCs and use whatever.
Right.
And we'd have Matty cables out there. And oh, why is it noisy? Amphenol, yeah, I think it's Amphenol as well. Yeah.
So, was there anything else you wanted
What
to touch
else?
on? I know there's probably maybe some question. Oh, Kings. It probably is Kings. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, probably is.
Kings is good. We use Kings at work.
Shout out to
Not
my
sponsored.
my dad, the broadcast engineer, watching us and
Criticizing our broadcast.
probably criticizing our podcast. I was about to say.
But I'm also broadcasting. That's okay. Just much lower on the totem pole.
So if there's any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're
Yeah.
going to try to wrap this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Some
Anything?
units.
Let me pop this question up here so we can all see it.
Yes, definitely. Anything with an antenna pass through often has to be on. Otherwise, it will not pass signal.
Yeah.
Yes, that will get you. That's another one of those you have to kind of mess up once, and then So
Or have a panic attack.
yeah, it's half the time it is troubleshooting wireless is just straight up experiencing it, fighting through an issue, figuring it out, and then next time there really isn't a book you can read to get you through all of it. It's just a matter of trying it, and don't be afraid of it. It's not black magic. You just got to go and mess with it. Greg said before, RFNE has some great webinars online as well that might even dive a little bit deeper than what we did today. But hopefully you guys found all of this interesting. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Steve will be back on Monday. Grooney?
I believe Steve is back on Monday. And then I believe I'm going to be back on Wednesday with possibly these two again. We'll see who wants to join in on this, but we're going to do a maximizing your X32
Yeah.
episode about getting some your best results out of that. So until that, there's one question. What do I think about the Soundcraft VI series? A plus for relevance. I've only used the one, so it was cool. Yeah. I've gotten myself in trouble on that before.
I used one.
I was there with you.
No. Oh yeah, that was. Which one was that? That was the VI one. I used the monster. The thing is like 6-7 feet long.
You used the VI in Philly when you did that show.
Oh yeah, I know. That's why I said I got myself into trouble.
Yeah, he did.
Personally, I'm not the biggest Soundcraft fan. But to each their own.
Yeah.
It's just a different tool for the job.
You
Anyway,
or did you guys try?
Cool. So, anyways, yeah. So thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. If you have an idea of something you want to see us do, comment below on the actual comment, not on the live chat, so we can see it. Or make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, Sound Shop Vlogs, for even more extra behind the scenes content. And thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you next time.